So welcome everybody. I'm Bill Kramer. On behalf of David Johnson and True Chicago, as well as the staff of Wonderful Machine, I'd like to welcome you to this Zoom open house. Our guests today are photographers Tonika Johnson and Marcus Smith, Google Creative Director Julian Gilliam, and Dorian Rushing, Senior Director of Hawkeye Agency. I appreciate all of you joining us.
Hi.
In the wake of the killing of George Floyd by a police officer, we're here to acknowledge the pain and trauma that so many are feeling, especially Black Americans. We want to stand in solidarity with our fellow photographers and creatives in this difficult time. We want to face head on the challenges and consider how all of us can be part of a meaningful change that is so long overdue, both within our industry and in society at large. My co-host today is David Johnson. David is an accomplished commercial and editorial photographer, and he's been with a Wonderful Machine member photographer for over 10 years. I've had the pleasure of meeting with David during my visits to Chicago. Every time I've talked to him, I've learned something valuable. Can you guys mute?
You probably maybe need to mute everybody.
There we go. Maybe not.
That's Brandon.
David runs an organization called True Chicago, a community of young artists and entrepreneurs seeking to make a lasting impact through their creative work. So after last week's protests, in thinking about how Wonderful Machine could respond to this crisis, David was the first person we called. In that conversation, David spoke about how traumatic this tragedy has been for him and others, likening it to losing a family member. In George Floyd, they saw a father, a son, a brother. The poignancy of that drew a stark picture for me of the racial divide we have in America. As far as we've come, we still have far to go. As we consider the format for today's meeting, David thought perhaps more than anything else, we need empathy to provide a sense of direction for the future. So we've brought together 4 creatives who've generously agreed to share their stories and thoughts for a path forward. David, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, hey everybody. This is great. I really appreciate you all being here. Would love to even start off with this. I'm going to introduce some of my colleagues and just wonderful people that I just respect and admire and appreciate as creatives. But while I'm doing that, I would love if some of you guys could even tell us where you're joining from. So there's the chat feature that is down at the bottom there, and we will have that space open for you guys to give comments as needed, but also I would say more importantly, we're going to try and leave some margin for questions towards the end. So yeah, this is great. Love to see everybody letting us know where they're joining on from. Super helpful. You guys are literally coming from all over the country. Is exciting to see. So the first thing that I will say before I introduce just my friends that I invited to be on here with us is just a little bit, just a couple of thoughts that I had leading up to this moment. I really appreciated Bill reaching out. I appreciate Wonderful Machine as an organization and just the direction that they are proactively trying to move as a result of this. The first couple of things that I will say, I want to talk about what this time is not. I think that's an important thing to do. This time is not the moment where we're going to try and check the listening box for everybody. I know that there's a lot of folks that, you've been encouraged to listen to Black voices, which you should and which you want to and which you'll have the chance to do right now. But this time is not solely to make sure that that is covered for you. I think that that's an important, this time is really to hear some stories, hear where people are coming from, but also hear just a sense of what the future could look like, just a sense of what we would like the future to look like and what ways we can move forward. I think this is also not a time where you're going to listen to Black people talk about the ways that they can come up with areas to make this better. Or they, specifically Black people, can come up with ways to come up with all of the changes that need to be made. I think that this is, by and large, a one-sided issue that doesn't absolve, challenges in Black America. But I think, by and large, we're talking about an issue that's coming from one side that we really want to rectify, especially as it pertains to the creative industry that we're all living and operating in it. Also, my mom just joined, so that's cool. There she is. So with that in mind, I think, I don't want to just talk about, sad stories from this moment. I also want to start talking about ways that we can look at a better future, ways that we can proactively impact a better future. And so the way, it's difficult because if you've spent any time on social media, which is kind of like a fire hose right now of content coming at you. If you spent any time on social media, one of the things that you've seen is, a lot of qualifiers, a lot of people that want to say, man, this is horrible. But, there are some good, there are really good cops out there. Or, man, this is horrible, but let's not forget what a great country we live in. Or, man, this is horrible, but, let's not discount all of the other great neighborhoods and areas that we have, which, on paper, I agree with that. But this is an urgent moment. And what we see in the lens we have seen the last week through as Black creatives, as Black Americans, I think is a little different in that I'm trying to think of the best example. I would liken it to like a house. So if you have a big house and you have a bunch of rooms and each room has nice things and each room has challenges, this is almost like, imagine if one of those rooms started on fire, and instead of putting out the fire, we qualified it by closing the door, and we wanted to talk about the nice tile and the nice shutters that were in the other rooms, which sounds pretty silly because one of the rooms is on fire. And what happens is we wind up being concerned about the different rooms in the house rather than being concerned about putting out the fire itself. And so I think what we're doing right now is we're talking about not only how to put out that fire, but how to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen again, and how to make sure that we're aware enough and we're listening to the right voices to show us how we can be proactive in these moments. So with that said, I appreciate you guys listening to me. I want to introduce just my cohorts today, people that I deeply, deeply respect. And I'll tell you the reason why I asked for each one of these people to join is because in their own right, they've been trailblazers in the areas that we're going to talk about. In their own right, they have a voice that is very, very powerful in the creative community. So I'm going to go ladies first and introduce Tonika Johnson. She is just, just a great friend and someone I want to be like when I grow up. She is someone that is not only an artist, but also an activist. If you've never heard of Tonika Johnson, all you need to do is look up the Folded Map Project. If you're not writing it down, that literally, everybody's talking about resources, this is one of the first resources that you should go to, is the Folded Map Project, where she has taken the time to photograph, interview, and document people on opposite sides of the city of Chicago who have the same address. So if they're on Ashland on the north side, she photographs their house and interacts with them. And then she goes to the south side, same address, and she tells the story of two people, two groups, and brings them together. So anyway, that has gotten national attention from everything from National Geographic to Vice to Chicago. She shared the front page with Donald Trump on the Tribune. So all that to say, Tonika Johnson, welcome. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much.
Next, I want to introduce Dorian Rushing. So it's really interesting because I mean, I'm a person who believes in divine appointments. And I remember I was flying back from Alabama. Maybe we're working on almost a year ago. And I happened to sit next to Dorian on the plane, and we realized that we were both originally from the south side of Chicago. And he talked about just his experience in the agency world, and we just became fast friends. And what I realized is this is a man who's really interested in opening doors for other young Black creatives and young professionals, and has just really, even though he may not be directly a creative himself in the traditional sense of the word, he is definitely someone who is paving the way and opening doors on the agency side and the organizational side for young Black creatives. So Dorian Rushing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Next, I want to introduce Julien Gilliam, otherwise known as Logic. This is another brother that I just really appreciate. What I appreciate about Julien is that a lot of young Black artists, Black creatives have had to try and become something else to be accepted. They've had to try and become something else to really be presented the right way or reach the height that they want to reach. And this is somebody that has not done that. He has remained himself. He has really carved out his own space, and rather than bending to the organization, he's caused the organization to bend to him. And really, I've just followed his work from afar. He's a visual artist, painter. If you go and look on Instagram and just see just the incredible work that he does. He, for a long time, was with Leo Burnett as a creative director, and is now more recently become a creative director at Google here in Chicago. And has received national attention for his work. So Julien Gilliam, Logic, thank you for being with us. And last but not least, the guy that I've known probably the longest out of all of these guys is Marcus Smith. And I'll tell you why I became friends with him, because his work was so good, it infuriated me. He was one of those guys where the more work that I would see that he did, the more I would become frustrated with my own work. I know you all have seen somebody like that, where you look up their work and you're almost like, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I'm in the wrong business. And that's Marcus, to be honest. His work is absolutely incredible. He's a photographer. He's a director. He works with motion. And I would say most notably, you could see his work in the Nike Basketball Style Guide. He's worked with LeBron James. He's worked with Kobe Bryant. He's worked with Abercrombie and Fitch. He's worked with Reebok. He's worked with Adidas. On and on it goes. And not just worked with them, but has become a staple, a go-to person. And really, hailing from the south side of Chicago, and really just a great example of someone who, before being hired to do the work that he wanted to do, he went out and did it and produced it himself. And then he continued to create that same kind of work. So everybody, you can mute clap for our guests today. Thank you guys for being with us. I really appreciate it. So I just want to jump in, and I have some questions that I've curated today that I think will be relevant and just kind of help us all in a forward-moving way. And if you're just joining us, I just introduced our guest today, and just want to go through a couple of questions. And there'll be moments that I'll ask individuals questions, and there'll be moments where everybody can chime in. If you have questions as we go, you can throw them in the chat. I would ask that everybody stay on mute. And yeah, I think this will be a really profitable time. So let's just jump right into it. We have had a historic last couple of months, as we know. We were hit with COVID, and then if I can call that like the light jab, then we were hit with an uppercut of Ahmaud Arbery, and then another uppercut of George Floyd. And so it seems like we've reached a different kind of moment. And I want to start there with you guys. I want to ask you just what this last week has looked like for you as a person, as a creative, as a professional. What is the last week looked like for you?
I think we're all still processing.
Yeah. I
um,
think that, go ahead, Tonika, you can go first.
no, I will just say that personally, it's been difficult. It's forced me into I'm just making sure. It just forced me into a somber reflection of not only our country, but specifically issues that my work seeks to address. But the most recent events, even down to the nationwide rioting and looting, that just took even more personal impact on me. I grew up, still live in Chicago's Inglewood neighborhood, which is where I center all of my work. And I don't have anywhere to go grocery store shopping. Mm-hmm. I literally saw people looting. The block I live on is a residential block. It isn't on the main business corridor. So some of my neighbors are looters, and I was able to see that. And it's not even judgment on them. It's just processing all of this. I had just gotten to a point within the pandemic that I was emotionally stable enough to pivot the work that I had been doing before. And then, of course, all of this happens. And it just bubbled up all of the existing issues with systemic racism.
Tonika, can you tell everybody where you're from?
I am from Chicago, born and raised, Inglewood neighborhood, the neighborhood that everyone across the country is heard of as the example of being the worst neighborhood. And that's my home. I'm sitting here today. And the most recent chain of events have just really impacted me personally in my actual day-to-day life. So that's where I'm at, just still day 3 of really processing the fact that I can't get gas. I had to have friends from the north side bring me some items that I need. So yeah, I'm still processing, really, honestly. I'm actually just really sad.
Yeah.
Marcus, what were we gonna say?
I was gonna say that similarly to Tonika, that it kind of like, I would say that the recent events kind of just intensified the ongoing feeling that I always had before. Being somebody that's from the Southeast side, I'm from South Shore. Like, My mom still lives over there in the same house that, you know, that we moved into when I was 3. So like that is another one of those communities that's just like Inglewood. It was already a food desert and already had a lot of the issues and problems that sort of impoverished neighborhoods have. So within myself, I always had sort of like a battle going on between like how much do I get to do for myself being successful and having made it out, and how much do I need to contribute back to my community to help others do the same thing. But then seeing all the events that unfolded, you know, it just intensified that feeling even more, to feel like, man, is somebody like me doing enough? You know, like, because if it's that many people that felt like my only resort to getting some of the things that I needed was to go out and loot and all that stuff, it's like, it makes you feel sort of like helpless, because you're like, man, I want to help these people, you know? Similarly to Tonika, I went and visited my mom, and a lot of her neighbors are people that participated in that, you know. But when I was there, I was seeing people unload cars, and they were taking out bottles of water or Pampers, or one guy went and got like a fan, you know. And so it's like people were doing things that they that they felt like they needed to do. And that's the part that makes me feel sad about it all, is that, you know, we have become so like about self that these people resorted to that, and still it ended up being a selfish thing, but you know, it's like that's what they needed to do, you know, to get what they needed. So I would say everything just makes me feel just like intensely sad. And so you just have like this whole like cycle of feeling sad, motivated, sad, and then motivated and sad again. You know what I mean?
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what it's been for me.
I like that. I like that, just real quick, because I think one thing that's worth noting is, you know, you hear terms like, oh, I'm just trying to survive, I'm just trying to get through the week or whatever. I think that there is an ignorance for a large part of the country between how close a lot of Black communities are to just needing to survive, to just needing to get Pampers, to just needing to get these things that, you know, are never actually an issue outside of those communities. So I hear you.
So it's interesting, David. One of the things that, you know, as Marcus just said, the idea of going from sad to inspired, sad to inspired, I think that is a very good way. It's a roller coaster of a trip. As we look at it, I've been sad based off of all of the activities that's happened. And the sad part is the rioting and the looting and people stealing and doing those different things. I can look up and down my Facebook page, and I know that people that I know, they're selling things on Facebook. And so I know these are people that I know, right? And so they have taken this opportunity to take advantage of a situation. And that's just the reality, right? We've been held up in a house for 2 months, 3 months, and they were unleashed into the world, and then they had an opportunity to take advantage of it. But despite all of that, I am more inspired today than I have ever been. As you look at the peaceful protests, as you look at the people that are out there, we have, right now in America, we have had more people step up and say, enough is enough, right? And so the idea that you have these folks out there that's supporting you, and when you have support, we're not here to change people's minds or make people less racist or to make them like Black people. We just want to help. We just want to make sure that people are held accountable for the actions that they do. Right? If you do something wrong, if you kill an unarmed Black man, if you kill somebody, be held accountable for it. Right? I recently took a trip down on one of my trips to Alabama. I went to the museum down there were focused on lynching and slavery, and that idea that, you know, I'm hopeful that these names, you know, George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, I hope those names are added to those sites, so that, because at the end of the day,
Looks like they muted. Go ahead.
At the end of the day, those people, we need to show in history that modern lynching continued on through 2021.
Hello.
Yeah, I think we had. Yeah, as you guys join, make sure you mute. And one other thing that I'll say that's helpful, if you see in the top right-hand corner there, it says speaker view or gallery view. It might be I am a little on the ADD side of things. It might be helpful to put it on the speaker view so you could just kind of zone in on who has the floor. I think Julian would love to hear any of your thoughts. Also, I forgot to mention, Julian hails from St. Louis. So just wanted to throw that out there. Love to SDL. I think you're muted, Julian.
I am muted. Yeah, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, neighborhood called Delwood that neighbored Ferguson. So yeah, all those things that were burning a couple years ago, I used to grace those streets. But for me, this process has been, I mean, it's overwhelming. But the crazy thing is it doesn't surprise me, like any of it. I mean, we've always, I mean, like for instance, racism isn't new. It's just now being able to be filmed.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about being an artist is it sucks that all the homage work that I've done as far as like Black Panther jackets and things like that, if you look at some of my work, but it's unfortunate that my work is still relevant today, as far as like homaging the Black Panther Party or doing this thing about like oppression or what have you. It's super exhausting because, like I said, it's like to you when we had this conversation a while ago, David, was it is important for Black artists to exist right now to help create that our narrative and to carry that along. But it sucks that we have to use our time and energy to do such things, just given the state in the world that we live in. And for me, as far as like the looting and the rioting, excuse my language, I'm like burn this bitch down. And what I mean is what is that? I don't know.
Well, Zoom has a history of trolling certain conversations. So
yeah, it's nice. It's light. It gives a nice lighter touch. But for the looting and the rioting and things like that, I mean, this is nothing new. It's been going like it's a result. Like we have no investment in any of these places. We have no investment in downtown Chicago. We're not vested in downtown any place in New York. We're not vested in LA. We don't own any of these products. We have no real estate whatsoever. And the system has set it to a point where they want us to keep us in this position of being mass consumers and not to be innovators. When we try, they burn it down. We have Black Wall Street for evidence and proof. So like, I mean, we've been protesting, we've been peacefully marching, we've worn hoodies and we ate Skittles and we made hashtags and I mean, what else do you want us to do? You know what I mean? Like, you have these people who are hungry. Yeah, we did have this pandemic. People are hungry and starving, but Nike is insured. They sell they products 1,000%. And the crazy thing is, I work in advertising, so I see how they profit off our Black bodies. So like for this rioting and looting, like I don't have any sympathy whatsoever. Like it took all of this just to persecute 4 people. It took thousands of arrests to persecute 4 people.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't understand. I understand the peaceful part, but it's not going to, it works to a degree. I think it's checks and balances, but I think let people, like, if these people need to loot and steal this stuff that we have to spend years and years to like attain, you know, like we have renter centers, you know what I'm saying? Like that's crazy. We have cashing places that's only in the hood. Like this stuff is not for us. So I'm angry.
I love that.
Oh, sorry, bro.
No, all I was going to say is I love that, Julian. And just to let you guys know, one of the reasons why I asked Julian to be on here is because, I mean, one, he has prior experience with some of this stuff and has maybe a different depth of knowledge on it than some of us even would. And I would even add to what you just said is like, you know, what you're seeing, the fire that the fires that you're seeing all over the country overlap with what I was saying about the house that has a burning room.
Mm-hmm.
All that you're seeing, the fire already existed. All that you're seeing is now it's spreading throughout the house. Like, and if we're not addressing the fire in the room, then the whole house does burn down. And so I think that that's a very important point to add is like, yo, this is not new. And 2, we have been sounding the alarm. And 3, now, you know, people want to talk about it a little bit more. What were you going to say, Tonika?
To Logic's point, you know, the unfortunate reality that history has shown us is that Black lives literally have to get sacrificed in order for these movements to become larger public conversations that eventually end up with some kind of legislation. And that is also problematic. We should not have to have Black men and women dying at the hands of many people, but we'll just focus on police officers, just for it to become a national conversation that goes historically back to the disinvestment in our neighborhood. And when people talk about, I don't make any personal judgments about the looting because that was unfortunately a necessary behavior to even bring this conversation to the national public. Now everyone is talking about stuff that we've all dealt with in our work of systemic racism, like period. That is the problem. And the unfortunate reality is it's a necessary setback. Like the neighborhood that I live in already had decades of disinvestment. So yeah, there is a huge economic impact.
Can I invest on your mom?
I knew that was gonna happen because I was making a point. So I knew
Who is the love one?
No one likes you.
Too deep. It was getting too deep.
Yeah, this happened.
So
George Floyd deserved it.
Hello?
Oh my God. Look at this.
So David, can you go back out and we come back?
What's going on?
That's a troll.
This,
That's a troll.
Is this
Right.
my
These
place?
are all trolls.
yeah.
So the point prior to the troll.
Noob.
The only troll is you, nigga.
Oh,
Noob.
Yeah, kind of be looking like a troll.
I mean,
I'm actually glad that this is happening.
and I'm recording it. So this is perfect. This is definitely going to be in another
This is
art project.
exactly, I'm glad that this is on full display during a conversation.
Oh, I'm sharing
Fuck up,
it.
you ugly boomer.
I'm sharing it.
To computer.
Yep, there we go.
So you're starting recording. Yeah.
Yeah.
So David, it seemed like we sort of got through the first part, which was sort of sharing how everybody was feeling at this moment, and maybe it's time to cut to the chase and get down to like, what can we do to move forward? What kind of tangible action can we take?
Yes. What I don't want to do, because I actually do think it is pretty central to what's happening, is like, I don't want to skip the lens that people have. I think what the next thing that I was going to talk about that was going to kind of lead us into some of those solutions is what's different about this moment. You know, we have a laundry list, a history of these crazy moments. But for some reason, this is happening and seems like it's hitting people in the heart, and whether it's, you know, causing things like what we just saw, or if it's causing people to feel a sense of responsibility. One of the things that I've really felt and said is that, I would never say that, as a white person, that you're guilty for, the crazy things and the horrible things that have happened in the past. But I would say there's a responsibility in this moment today. And I think, stepping aside from the weight of guilt and stepping into the driver's seat of a responsibility of what could be done, just like Bill was talking about. So, yeah, I want to ask, I think we have Marcus and Julian on here, and also Dorian. I want to ask you guys, what's different about this moment than the other moments? What feels different about this moment?
From my perspective, I think, David, and I think I just said it, I think there's more interest from people outside of being Black than it ever has been. And I don't know it's because of where we are in the world and from a political perspective, all of those different things, but we've seen more interest. When I look at protesters and I look out in the world, I see much more than just the Black and brown people that normally are out there and marching. And so I think because of that, I've seen more interest in my organization. My CEO sent out a note. My CEO's boss sent out a note. Everybody sent out a note. They're creating task force. They're doing different things in order to make sure that they are a part of the solution. And so I'm hopeful that we're not doing a lot of talking, and there's going to be some action behind it, right? And so that's the key to do something. But at the end of the day, I think that there is a lot more interest, and it's interesting. It took a knee, and I say the knee with Colin Kaepernick, right, to really start this conversation again, and then it took a knee to progress it, right, and then the knee being and the knee in the neck of George Floyd. So, idea there, and hopefully that there are people who are listening and talking and doing some action versus, and it seems that way, and I'm hopeful that we can continue moving forward.
Marcus or Julian, any thoughts there?
I think the difference for this one is there was no discrepancy in the video. It was like the first time that all people of no matter your background could see that it was fucked up. And there wasn't like, did he fight first? Was he resisting arrest? There was none of that. And it was I work in a lot of places, a lot of us do, that are predominantly white, and they're angry, right? White people are angry or whatever, but they don't know why. They know that why they're angry because they saw a man die, but they don't know. And they're looking at those 3 guys or 4 guys like they're a bad apple, but they don't understand that killing Black people is a sport. That's putting a deer head on the wall. When they saw the disregard for human life in his eyes, but they don't know how ingrained that is in our culture.
Yeah.
So I think that's they want to help, but they don't know why they're helping. They just know that we're getting killed, but they don't know why we're getting killed. So I think, again, I'm going back into the education piece because I think that is so important, as to know the person or the people that you're looking at. Know why we live in a hood. Know why our dialect is a certain way. Know why hip hop was manifested, or why that's your favorite genre. But the reason why this was different is because everyone can relate to those 9 minutes of horror, and you couldn't disregard that. And then it was a polarizing situation, because on the complete opposite, not even a month ago, were white protesters with M16s on Capitol. So, and then there was no force of anything. So I think when we had and again with the Kaepernick thing, but even white people didn't understand this because he was condemned for kneeling, so all of these things, it took this short amount of time of people with no resources and no like food droughts and things we spoke, and you don't have any food or you don't have any income coming in, you hungry, and then the next thing you want to do is kill us on camera. It's a similar thing with the Mike Brown thing. They killed him already in Ferguson. Like, there are food droughts, there's no resources, there's no job elevation, like there's none of that. And then you come to our hood and kill us and leave us in the street for 12 hours. That's like the utmost disrespect. That's telling us, like, we already knew that you didn't look at us like anything, but this just putting so So I think that's where that is. A lot of people are rallying because you can't unsee that shit. But I think that underlying thing, the next step is they're like, how can, because it's toxic, because everyone wants to be our savior now. Like white people want to be our savior now. And that's not the answer. Like you need to become an accomplice. You have to live here too. And like, you know what I'm saying? So like, I think, I don't know if I said this earlier because it's been so much going on, but that person looks like you. And the person that died looks like me. I know how we know how we feel. Black people know how we feel. And we've been fighting a good fight for a long time. But now it's like, how can you got to look at yourself in those officers and understand why your uncle or your aunt is doing this to us. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's where that thing comes from. You couldn't unsee it, and it was so blatant that everyone had to see that, and just those so close with the Capitol thing and the white people with M16s, and they don't get any pushback. All of those things, that's where that eruption came from. Now this point is, this is my last point. I was talking to my guy who's from Germany, and he's been here for like 4 years or so, and they have to learn about Hitler, and all the schools have to learn about Hitler and the things that they did to Jews and the burning and desecrating people. Like they have to learn about all of that. And in 2 generations, everyone is aware that racism was a thing, that they killed people so that they don't repeat the same mistakes. We don't teach it because those mistakes are meant to continue to be repeated, just in a more genius level type of situation, hence calling us thugs, that those code words and systematic oppression, hence the 13th Amendment. All those things are so our white counterparts are not phased by it. They're so yeah, man. Sorry for hijacking, but
no, you're good.
I think that's why. But I think it needs to be more. I think people, our allies or our accomplices, need to understand it to the most elementary level as to the people that they're standing next to and the hardships we have to overcome, and not just slavery. It's bigger than slavery.
Yeah. Marcus, were you going to say something? Looks like
to say, I was trying to send out the new info to some people to make sure they were able to get in.
Yeah.
But also I was just gonna say, to a lot of Julian's points, like I just feel like, you know, the difference now is the element of social media being involved and sort of like our voices being sort of like amplified a lot more, and the people who claim to be allies and whatnot, having a platform that they have to be honest to, you know. I think that that's one of the things that is like mad different than times before, where you do have a time now. We're living in a time now where more people, even a regular person, is considered a public figure, like a non-famous person. So you can kind of hold these people's feet to the fire a little bit more, to ask them directly, like, for the things that you stand for and the things that you profit from, what are you gonna do actually, you know, and not just sit back. It's not good enough to say anymore, oh yeah, I'm friends with David or I'm friends with Marcus, and that's cool. You know, I think that this is about the new sort of like thing that I'm seeing is it is okay to challenge people beyond that, you know. It's okay to challenge our white allies to say, what are you doing that's hard? It's easy to be disgusted and feel bad about seeing a person die that didn't deserve to die. Like, if you're not a psychopath or a sociopath, then, you know, those are the feelings that you should have.
Right.
You know, so it's like, now, how are you going to frame that into something that actually is tangible for people that are experiencing like a different sort of world than you are, you know?
So, well, first off, I think there was somebody that was typing and we could hear you. So one thing that I will say to that, and that kind of leads me into my next point, and Marcus, you had talked about this before, and I would love for both Dorian and Julian to just give us a sense, you know, we were just kind of thawing out to start thinking about work. Whether or not we were going to be able to do the same kind of work or not is a different story. But I feel like I know for me personally, as a creative and as a photographer, this has really given pause to what kind of work I want to do, or what kind of work I feel like is a good idea to pursue at this moment. And so I guess that's my next question, is how do you feel like this time is affecting the work that you do, or will affect the work that you're thinking about doing in the future?
From my perspective, I think being in an agency and working on the account management team, not necessarily the work that I do, but how do I continue to open doors? And now, hopefully, my leadership team sees the ability to give minorities, in particular Black people, an opportunity. And so that is ultimately my goal as I look at things and wonder, how do I get more Black people into the world of advertising? It's very few of us, and it's very few of us. And it's funny, I was talking to my buddy the other day, and I told him the other day, I said, people always ask why people do the head nod, Black people do the head nod. And I was telling him, like, I think about it when I do that, and the head nod is saying, hey, I see you.
Right.
And when they come back and that head nod back is like, I see you too. I'm happy to have you here, right? And that idea. And so it's not going to affect the work that I do. Obviously, brands are going to come in and they're going to try to send a message and craft a message and figure out how to make things work and what do they need to say in order to make things seem inclusive. But they're not going to change people's feelings, right? And that's not their job. So for me, I'm not worried about changing people's feelings, and I'm worried about giving people opportunity. And so as long as I continue to focus on that and give young Black creatives opportunities, and I spend a lot of time with them, and I want to make sure that I continue to give them opportunities and to continue to help them to grow. Because if I don't give them a hand, I know no one else will.
That's huge. I feel like there's so many instances where I know, whether it's an intern or assistant that I'm looking for, the people that I'm hiring on a production team, that is one of the things that I am thinking about. I am very cognizant of, do I have minorities on that team? Am I talking to, young Black creatives and really giving them a chance, and in a lot of instances, even a priority of a chance, just because I know chances are there might not be other opportunities out there. So I do think that that's a huge thing, especially folks who are in a hiring position can be thinking about. So
as an artist, I've always used my resources to create propaganda or some type of an awareness. Like the shirt I made, it says product of America with a price tag on it, because we are tax write-offs. And that's the sad part about it, just to understand that, or the roads paved in gold and it says, oh, walk a mile in my shoes on this side. So I'm going to continue to create pieces and art pieces to help liberate people, not even just Black people, just people, period. Because I think that everyone helps everything. But also working in these corporate environments, and like just when I was working at Leo Burnett, I realized that we lived, our agency was downtown and we were 27 floors up. Each and every day, those people didn't even acknowledge the space that we were in or the view that we had. So I made a point to utilize those spaces for the community within Chicago. So I wanted to cross-pollinate the underground art scene and those thinkers, whether it's Black people, Hispanic people, or whatever, and cross-pollinate them with the agency space. Otherwise, they would just use them for their artwork for some type of activation, and then they're nowhere to be found during these times. So that was like my thing. Even in this new area I'm in at the Google place, we've been having discussions. I think that's as much as I could say, but having no filter, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
They can't do anything to us, but I think those is like educating in those spaces, because those spaces wield the power. And unfortunately, again, I go to the education piece. I'm preaching that a lot. Is okay. We got you to the point where you understand it's fucked up. Okay, now you need to understand why. So I think that empathy thing. So I think because we know why we're fighting. You know, we know why this isn't just a hashtag. That's why when this happened, we're like, we're not about to just make another hashtag. That don't even make sense. It's nothing. You know, like it doesn't make sense. So even me, I think we have to all if you work in some type of corporate space, they're not gonna fire you. It's a bad look. So you have to voice your opinion, and even I know we always say it's up to you to educate yourself because we have to do it to ourselves. But at this point, we have to be relentlessly honest and unapologetically honest to everyone. You know, like, because don't be afraid to be called that angry black person because we are angry, you know, and then so it's always been justified, but like at this point, you can't hide it. Like 2 months from now, 6 months from now, we should not forget what's happening. Hopefully, we're trying not to let this dissipate because a lot of times that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to hold out until we run out of power, run out of steam, run out of juice, and we can't let that happen. So use your power in all your spaces.
I think that that's huge because one, I do want to acknowledge one thing that you said in there, and Dorian was kind of alluding to it too, is just this, you know, there's outrage, and there was outrage at watching that video, and but at the same time, you know, you start to realize who that really sunk in with after a few days, after a few, you know, because I think that is a good place where it starts. It isn't, you know, I don't need a post. I need you to like actually be mad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, 100%.
I don't need you to figure out like, oh, how can I craft my words in a public way to make sure? Yes, I want people to be outspoken. I don't want people to be silent. That's important. But I feel like the very first step for everybody to really see massive change is for them to actually be mad, like personally, that you sit with it, that it ruins your time, it ruins your day, it ruins you know, your feeling in the moment. Because if it's not, then that tells you, you know, you are still in a place where you in your heart of hearts believe that you can just go on just fine regardless of how black people are doing, because it's out of sight, out of mind sort of a thing. So having said that, one of the things that I think of is, you know, for you guys, specifically Marcus, Dorian, and Julian, like what does activism look like for you in the season? I mean, you may or may not be in the streets holding a sign, but in some way, I know that all of us are thinking of different ways that we might approach things differently. That could be forms of being proactive and having activism. So give me your thoughts.
I think overall, from an activism perspective, I think it's to be active, to do something, right? At the end of the day, you either are part of the problem or you're part of the solution, right? And so when I look at it, I just want to make sure that I have, you know, I look like a young man, and because I am a young man, but I'm a father of a 22-year-old, you know. I'm a grandfather these days, right? I'm just being honest, right? I'm super excited about that. I have 4 boys that I'm worried about every single day. And so if I do nothing, right, then I'm worried about how they're gonna, you know, grow up and what they're gonna do. They're active, they're out there, they're mad, they're enraged. They see their friends get arrested. They see their friends being pulled over. There are a lot of different things. So my job as a father first, and then as a role model second, is to make sure that I'm concerned about their concerns and we're concerned about it together. And we go do something. And we do something every day. We talk about it. I tell them to tell me if they're mad, if they're angry, if they have issues. Let's talk about it. Let's talk through it, because we don't want them to do anything stupid. They're out there protesting and walking the streets and doing those things. And we have to do something. If we don't do anything, then it's not worth it.
Yeah. Marcus, do you have any thoughts on that?
I was on mute, but yeah, I think that Logic kind of touched on it a little bit in his last thing that he was saying when he was just talking about how we need to continue wielding our power. I think that even that is a form of activism.
Yeah.
In being able to call out things or be able to be the sort of like black voice that says, hold on, this isn't right. Similarly, I've had to do that fairly recently in a production that was trying to still happen. With
Can you?
all of the things
I was
that was
hoping
going
that
on.
you would. I was hoping that you would go there. Can you actually just, if you feel comfortable, share as much of that story as you want?
Yeah. I won't go into detail about who the client is and agency and whatnot, but it was a production that was like slated to happen toward the beginning of the week. And then all the stuff with the rioting and looting started to take place. And the production was still trying to just move forward later in the week. And I just like woke up in that next morning, and the first day after all the rioting and looting had took place. And I was so like, just like enthralled mentally with all that was going on with that I just couldn't even think about that production. Like I could care less about that production. So I was just like, I called up the production, I called up the agency folk, and I was just like, look, we do not need to be doing this right now. Like all of us need to be focusing our attention on what we can do to help either A, our families, or B, being there for emotional support for the people that are being affected by this. Even with just like, all the way down to the talent and being, sort of like asking them to be in a position to perform and all that stuff, not knowing how they have been affected by this. And I knew that there was a risk with speaking shape moving forward.
No, I like that, and I appreciate that. I think I think that kind of leads into the next question that's on here. Megan said statements are good, but where is the action money to support the commitments, and are they hiring Black employees? I think that is, really something to be thinking about. I know a lot of you guys might not, you may be self-employed. You may be someone that is, an independent contractor yourself. But even in those small spaces, you actually do have the power to look at, what would it look like to not just hire the first person that I'm most familiar with? What would it look like to dip into spaces where I would be, overlapping my projects with a person of color? And I mean, it's tough because I know a lot of the white people that I know don't naturally overlap. Their life doesn't naturally overlap with Black people's lives. And honestly, top to bottom, what I think we're talking about is an issue of comfort, is disrupting comfort. Dorian, I remember you said to me when we first started talking about everything happening with COVID and everything, you mentioned that with disruption comes opportunity.
Absolutely.
I think that that's a huge thing to really get to, is like trying to sift through this disruption in this moment in time and see where it's providing opportunity for us, rather than just, a disruption and I'm not as comfortable as I was. So I think, I want to, I first just want to say, I know we got to end our time here, but I just want to say I appreciate you guys jumping back on. That was a really discouraging thing that happened earlier. I wish that didn't happen, and I'm glad that you guys jumped back on with us. I know that I just really appreciate both Marcus and Dorian, and I know Tonika didn't jump back on with us. I know Logic brought some really incredible things. But I will say, I mean, I don't know that any of them wanted to be on here today. They did this because, one, I know that they're friends with me, and they just were doing it partly because I was asking. I don't know that there's a lot of Black people that are like, man, you know what I want to talk about today? It's racial injustice. I don't know that that's the most exciting thing to be talking about, but these are some folks that see it as, a chance for them to move the needle forward, chance for them to use their voice to maybe open up the world a little bit. So with that, if you guys have any closing thoughts you want to give or closing things that you would like to say before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'll go. Hey, David, thanks a lot again for having me. I know we've talked a lot over the last couple of weeks, and, being in this situation of being locked in, sheltered in place, and now all the other things that are happening. For me, that incident that happened earlier, I wasn't happy that it happened, but I was okay with it. And the reason why, because I think there are probably a lot of people on the call who are a little uncomfortable, right? And they were uncomfortable with the moment. You had a lot of N-words going on. You had kill Black people. You did that. And I want you to understand that is what we live every day. That's our lives. And so in whether it's the corporate world, whether it's the everyday world, we live with somebody saying that to us every day, whether it's directly to our face, under our breath, if they just thought it. And so, welcome to our world. I hope you felt a little uncomfortable, because that's my life. Thank you, David, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dorian. Marcus?
I will just end it by saying, just backing up what Dorian just said. He sort of summed it up perfectly. And I think that's a perfect way to end this conversation. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys being on here. I will just close this up with just this one, this one thought, and it is this. I remember, and I've shared this several times, and I will continue to share it because it's the best picture that I have. And I remember, I think it was 2011. I had just started my first studio and opened it up, and I had two friends that were working with me on it. And I remember every day I'd walk up the back stairs, the fire escape, to get to my studio. And I just remember every day seeing, my friends who I was working with go in at the same time. And I remember this one day, and this is in Naperville at the time when I first started, which is a suburb of Chicago, about 45 minutes west, and it's predominantly white. So there were no other Black, business owners, definitely no Black photographers. It was just me, and I'd spent a lot of time there. So this one particular day, I remember it was a Friday. I walked up the stair escape, and I walked to the studio, and there's a brick wall back there, and on the brick wall, about 6 feet high and about 12 feet long, was just the word nigger, just like written in chalk, basically. And I saw it, and I stood there, and I was just kind of in disbelief. And then I just decided, you know what, I'm not even going to think about this right now. I opened the door, and I went in. So I remember one of the girls that was working with us at the time, she got there about 10 minutes later, and she came in frantic. She was like, David, did you see what they wrote on there? And I was like, yeah, I did. And she was like, who did that? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, was that about you? And I looked around, and I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that would apply to. They're not talking about you, that's for sure. And she laughed, and then got serious again, and she was like, well, what should we do? And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. She's like, we should. Maybe he's having some trouble.
No, I'm here. Are you looking for me?
Oh, Dorian, I think you got to mute.
Oh, hello.
There we go. I thought they were back. I think she was asking me what should we do, and I was like, I don't know. And then she said, this is the question I remember, and the reason why I tell you this. She said, who's gonna wash it off? And I just remember thinking, and I just told her, I was like, I don't know, but not me. And I just always think about that moment because, you know, she had the right reaction and she had the right heart. And I'm still friends with her to this day, an incredible young woman. But the thing was, you know, there was this feeling about who should wash it off. And I will tell you in this moment, the person who should wash it off is not a Black person, if that makes sense. So all that you just saw that happened, the craziness, people typing stuff, whatever. I know it's trolling. I know it could happen to anyone in theory. But my next thought is always the MLK speech and, you know, the dream and this, you know, beautiful picture and vision of the future that he gave us, that we not only still hold on today, but we also, you know, some of us have even experienced the reality of that dream. But the reality is that the dream needs maintenance, and the dream sometimes needs to be washed off. And that's the question that I feel like I leave with all of, on the minds of all of these conversations is who's going to wash it off? Who's gonna get to work and do that, you know, difficult, maybe uncomfortable, like Dorian was saying, work of washing it off? Because I could tell you right in this moment, this isn't about Black people going to wash it off. This isn't about that. And I think that, you know, the thing that gives me hope and the thing that gives me excitement is that I even got a call to lead a moment like this, that I even got, you know, even somebody reached out to me to do, and that you guys are on this call and that we are having this conversation. And I believe that this will spark conversations that will translate into action in your work, in your space, in how you have your life. And so, yeah, that's really what I have. That's my thought today. Would love for you guys to, we do a lot of different programs with True Chicago, the organization that we run. I will put the website over here so that you can check it out. But also, please don't hesitate to check out that list of resources if you're looking for just any next steps, things that you can be doing. That is also the same. The truechicago.co is also our same handle on Instagram, and would love to have any of you guys just follow us and be a part of continuing this conversation. I appreciate all of you guys being here. Thank you. I don't have the power to end this conversation, so.
David, it's Brian.
Yeah.
Bill's power died, but I just wanted to say thank you very much. You're a great man for doing this, and we really appreciate it. And thank you so much to Tonika and Marcus and Dorian and Logic as well.
No problem. Well, let's try and do this again, and in a way where the trolls can't get us.
I love it. Hope everyone has an awesome afternoon.
Thank you, guys.